You were basically just acting on another dopamine trip that you were then trying to enact.
Don't you go there, you son of a bitch.
You were just enacting it through.
You keep my Cheetos out of this.
Butterscotch.
Hey everybody, welcome to episode 92 of Coffee with Butterscotch, the game dev comedy podcast of Butterscotch Shenanigans. I'm Seth and I'm the games programmer.
I'm Adam and I'm the refactory.
I'm Sam and I'm the notist.
And today is April 4th, 2017. Warning, anything can happen on this show. There's going to be profanity. We're going to talk about all kinds of things. We're going to talk about life. It's going to get deep. We're going to struggle with some difficult concepts.
So if you can't swim,
get out.
go take some swimming lessons.
Also, if you're a baby or a child or an adult
Who doesn't like swears?
yeah, then get out of here. All right. What happened this week, brothers?
Many things.
All right. So first off, this past week, Sam's GDC talk has become available on the Utes.
The YouTubes.
Yeah.
It's racking up some views.
How many we got today?
I think 25,000.
It's pretty good. Slowing down though.
It's weird that because I gave the talk and there's like 80-ish people in the room, probably 60 or 80.
You were competing against a talk in an enormous room
Mm-hmm.
that had a line going like out the fucking door forever. So yeah, it's hard to compete with.
But it's weird because you gotta think about this whenever you give a talk and it's recorded.
Yeah.
Is that you're actually giving a talk to a stadium. You just don't know it yet.
There's no limit to the
You're going
audience.
to talk to the whole world.
So make sure it's pretty good. And I think that's been freaking me out a little bit. But yeah, so that's been really going really well. But the coolest things, actually, I've been getting just a shitload of notes from people about
Are people writing in?
about all the crazy stuff that they're going through.
Oh, is your email address at the end of that talk?
It is.
Shit.
Which may have been a poor choice in retrospect. But I've been getting, I got like a dozen notes over the weekend from people.
You got two-factor authentication set up, right?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
So I've been getting a bunch of notes from people that I think it's the sort of thing where people start sharing, right? If you share, then people share back. And that's been really intense. It's a good way. I mean, I wake up, I guess basically I have one in the inbox pretty much every day at least. So I wake up and I read this like real intense, heartfelt thing from someone. I'm like, oh, it's like a good way to start the day and also kind of a bad way to start the day.
Yeah. Maybe
It's like I wasn't ready to feel these feelings.
Maybe read it over lunch. That
Yeah,
way
I
you
think-
can go through the morning in kind of a emotionless stupor, you know,
how it likes
like
to
a
work.
normal person. Yeah.
But it's been really incredible. So everybody who's sent a note in, thanks a bunch.
Well, so we also got a message, a podcast question, which comes from podcast.bscotch.net. You can go there and ask with your Bscotch ID.
Yeah.
This question comes from Flame It Kermit, who says, "This is for Sam," which is
That is my name.
Sam.
Don't wear it out.
I think he has an accent. So this is for
Sam
Sam.
does? That's why he says Sam instead of Serum.
Serum. Did you know that when you type in Butterscotch Shenanigans to Google, one of the first autocompletes is cancer? Are you happy about this?
Well, no.
Because of popularity or unhappy because the first thing people associate you with is cancer? And I think we should backtrack and point out that your GDC talk is about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Which probably just makes it even
probably makes it even
more of a
worse.
problem.
So well, I guess first I'd say I'm not happy about the cancer fact, which would back it up all the way, you know.
Wait, so you're saying you did not enjoy having cancer?
I would put it as one of the least enjoyable activities I have participated in.
Probably
the
like-
more you learn, you know.
Probably like bottom three.
Yeah, bottom
Yeah.
three at least.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's that. But I think this is an interesting question because there's always, we talked about this a little bit in the past with the concept of a sob story.
Yeah.
Which is, it's really interesting when you share the personal side of something. I think this is, I'm not sure what to make of it, but we have this tendency to, I think, kind of just like hate companies so much that when they share a personal story, then it's just the idea that they're
It's just a marketing
Yeah,
angle.
they're trying to like fuck with you or like market or
Yeah.
get your feelings all wrapped up, as opposed to it being able to just be a thing where you get to connect with another person. So I haven't gotten any angry notes yet from the Crash Sense talk from people being like, "Fuck you for sharing this." I'm sure there's
Because people
coming.
don't send notes about that. They leave comments.
Right.
Right.
That's
So like
true.
if you go to
It's a lot safer for them.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, my favorite one was in the.
they're not going to
YouTube
open up a
thing.
direct communication line with you. They're
Yeah.
just going to drop an asshole comment on like
Yeah.
an article.
And then
or a
run
video.
fleeing, screaming.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the thing is, like on the video, you know, like in the comments, it's just like a barrage of people being like, "Oh my god, this is fantastic," you know, and then just like one comment in the middle is just like, "Too bad the game's shit."
Yeah, I
know?
saw that. I wanted to respond and be like, "Too bad your character's shit, you fucking face." Yeah, but
Yeah, you got to work on your personality.
But it already is. Like, that person already has a terrible life, you know?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I don't need to point it
It
out.
doesn't even matter.
Yeah,
But I think
just move on.
So with regards to sort of it being tied, the cancer story being tied to Crashlands in the studio, I mean, I think it's a hard thing because it's like if we didn't talk about it, then we're not actually sharing a lot of what the dev cycle was like with that game, a lot of what the influences were, a lot of what was going on and how we built it.
And why we made the game.
Yeah, I mean, like, how do you remove that context from the whole thing at all and have it make any sort of sense? And I think my hope is that within the next 3 to 5 years or so, that this is simply a thing that happened to us and a thing that was done. But currently, because Crashlands is sort of our big success, it is very much tied to the studio. The goal is, of course, to make a bunch of other badass stuff. So it's kind of just like what it is right now. But I mean, how do you guys feel about it? I think this is something I've always been curious about.
Well, I think it to me, it makes sense, especially when a team of this size, 3 of us made Crashlands, which means 1/3 of the studio was going through this directly. And also we're family. So our family was going through it. There's no way to disentangle that, because when you're making a game, especially with this small of a team, you're putting yourself into it. Right. Mm-hmm. And so, like, it's something that people say to me quite often. I don't know if you guys get this as well, but people say, like, I can hear you guys when I read the dialogue.
A lot of people have met us and chatted with us or heard the podcast. So
yeah,
once you read the narrative, you're like, okay, I see where this came from.
And the idea is like, it's the game. The game doesn't just. It's not like we form a company and then somehow like the LLC just produces a video game. Like, it's us making the game under the name of the company, and we put ourselves into it. We put our life experiences into it, and you just can't escape the fact that whatever it is that's really important to you or whatever's happening in your life is going to end up percolating into the game somehow, whether it comes out as a positive or a negative or whatever. But that's just the way it is. And so, yeah, I think you're right though. At the moment, because Crashlands is the big thing, then that's where it goes, right? Mm-hmm. But
it's also, the studio is also synonymous with Crashlands, right?
Yeah.
And it will be
for
some time. And so since all these things are synonymous to
each
other, and by the transitive property,
right?
So that's
So over the next couple of years, it'll just be the case that this is a footnote in the backstory of the studio. Once we have a Wikipedia page, which we currently we don't yet. So I don't know. I think maybe our podcast, because we can't make our own Wikipedia page. Apparently, that's
too self-indulgent.
It's against the rules. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So maybe 1 or 2 of our podcast listeners should jump on.
I think overall,
Crashlands has a Wikipedia page.
Yeah, it does.
But our studio does not.
Well, Crashlands has far more fans than our studio.
That's true. That's true.
But yeah, I think overall, it's simply a fact of where we're at right now in the timeline, that these things are all bound together.
Well, I just think there's no reason to separate them or pretend they're separate, because everything is made by people. And I think it's important to remember that when you're using stuff or interacting with a thing or even just out in the world,
That way you can get angry at a particular person.
Well, actually, no, it's not even that. It's
that sticky keys guy.
Sticky. Oh, that's right.
On Windows.
That. Hey, you want to turn on sticky keys? No,
I've had that thing off for so long.
I don't.
But I mean, it's, there was a person who made that decision, right? And they had some thought process going on. They had shit going on in their lives. And so for me, it's not about saying, well, now I have somebody to be angry at, right? It's about saying, I have no right to be angry about this. Like somebody did this, unless they were out to be an asshole, which some people are, right?
Arguably, I was by getting cancer. I mean, let's be real,
Yeah, how dare you?
But unless somebody's
out
to be
just
an
wanted
asshole
to sell some games
in some way, then
most elaborate scheme.
Then it's a good thing just to recognize that people made stuff, and that's actually interesting, and that you can't pull people out of the stuff that they have made. And then again, why would you want to?
Well, I think the other thing is there's part of the reason it's so bound up is because there's always the question from a design standpoint. Journalists always ask the question, what prompted you to make this game? Like, why this game?
Mm-hmm. What are you going to say?
What the fuck?
Yeah. I don't know. It just felt like it.
Just felt like making a huge game that I didn't think I could make. Yeah.
Yeah. No. No.
Yeah. I think it's, I think you get a lot of requests to, disentangle the personal element or the human element. They refer to it as the human element, right?
Yeah.
In terms of when you talk about these things. it's always brushed over or it's just not even covered, and you don't need.
Which is weird because like, what other element is there really? Anyway,
sweet games.
We don't yet have robots making our games.
Well, kind of.
Once we do, then we can stop talking.
We have
about
robots
personal
that do parts of our game.
stuff. They assist.
They assist.
Robotically
Robotically
assisted.
assisted. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So next news item is another human side story.
Yeah.
Which is that
Let's dig deep.
Papa
Oh yeah.
Costa.
Okay. Let me I'll take this one. So I asked her dad if I could share this story. And he said yes, and then he laughed a bunch, and then apparently he got his new glasses because his other ones broke. So here we go.
As a consequence of the story.
Yeah.
About
So last week, Dad was with Dad 2 in the living room, and Dad 2 was talking to Adam's wife on the phone. They were cackling away and having a good time, being very loud. And so Dad was like, I'm gonna step away. I'm gonna play catch with the dog. So he grabs the dog's toy and starts throwing this toy back and forth, playing fetch with the dog. And during this process,
In another room.
Yeah, he walks to the room. Basically, it's 8 feet away. It's the other room. So he can no longer, there's no eye contact. He can't see Dad number 2 talking on the phone, laughing, having a good time. It's just him throwing this ball with his dog. And at one point, the dog brings the ball back, and Dad, just sort of wanting to save some energy, is like, I'm not going to pick it up. I'm just going to kick it. I'm just going to kick the ball to play fetch with this dog. So he kicks, and then he wakes up horizontal. And he's like, he said he was just confused and stunned, and he's just like looking around like, what the fuck? I'm on the ground. Like, what happened? And he reaches back, and there's blood coming out of his face. And what had happened was when he went to kick the ball, they just like buffed the floors, and he was wearing socks. So
Slick as shit.
So I think the way he describes it, I think he must have kicked, and then he lost his other leg in the process of the swing.
Yeah.
But sort of spun to catch himself, but didn't catch himself, and so just face planted into the hardwood floor.
Ow!
Woke up, moments later, sometime later. Dad number 2 is still just carrying on in the living room. No response. And so he wakes up.
You
Essentially,
didn't hear the loud crack
of a skull hitting
the hardwood floor.
And so he wakes up, and he doesn't want to go in the other room because he's covered in blood. But it's because if you've ever gotten a head wound before, they bleed a lot. Even if it's just a small cut.
It's very startling to see.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so he doesn't want to just walk into the other room and just terrify Dad number 2. So he gets up, and then he just goes, and he takes care of his head, gets it cleaned up, cleans off the blood, gets an ice pack. And then, 10 minutes later, now he comes back and sits down, and Dad number 2 looks over. He's like, "What happened to you?" He said, I could have just died on the floor 8 feet away.
Could have.
But
he's tough.
But his glasses did shatter in the process. So basically, he just spun and face planted from kicking this dog ball.
This is the worry, though. If you're living by yourself, you're like, what happens?
Yeah.
If you just face plant.
Or if you're living with someone who's carrying on with the conversation.
Yeah, you're living with a dog, and the dog always wants you to play, and then you become grievously wounded.
Yeah. Well, I think the funny thing is because our dad sort of raised us on America's Funniest Home Videos, which are basically the fail videos.
Just people. It's
from back in the day.
It's just this.
It's just
on
this.
video.
Yeah. But he said he's never actually had one of those falls before. This was his first one.
Oh no.
And
Is he no
Does
longer?
he still think it's funny?
he said, yeah, it's hilarious. And once you're done with the pain and you're making sure you're not concussed and all that stuff.
As long as there's no permanent damage,
Yeah, it's hilarious.
then you're fine.
So he's in good spirits.
Yeah. All right. So other news is that there's some changes coming to the Steam store.
Yeah.
That's the Steam store.
Yeah, the Steam store. So Total Biscuit put up a video yesterday, which is an hour long. I'll give you the highlights, which I think are also being propagated all over the place now. But basically, he and Jim Sterling, who are two popular YouTubers, got to go to Valve and essentially have this long form, 7-hour meeting with the Valve and the Steam team to talk about a lot of stuff on the Steam store, and the principal one being a lot of the changes coming forward. So one of them is that there are curators currently on Steam. You might not know it because they're not really handled very well.
Doesn't do anything.
It doesn't do anything.
What's a curator?
But a curator on Steam is essentially someone in the case like a YouTuber or even us. We could start a curation page where we select games that we think are of high value, you could follow us, and then therefore you get recommendations from us about what games to buy and play, right? So it has a really good tie-in with YouTubers, with any sort of influencer community, and also with studios at large. And what the changes are they're going to be making is, again, to sort of keep on trying to fight this discoverability issue beyond something like Steam Direct, is they're putting a lot more, or they're planning on putting a lot more emphasis on the curation pages and opening up the ability for people to join what's called the Steam Explorers program. So you could, as an individual user, you could just sign up, and there's usually a limit on how many refunds you can use, I think like per month or per week or something like that. And they'll give you a free refund, and then you can essentially be in charge. Like, your job is to essentially find hidden gems. So games, basically what they do is they find games via all the data they have that are very highly rated but don't have a lot of sales, sort of like the ones that like never got to whatever that critical mass is to really sort of kick it, and then they serve those up to people based on whatever those people's interests are, and so you become this sort of,
so you as a player,
prospector.
You find a handful of curators who seem to share your taste, and then you follow them, and then you no longer have to worry about, when I go to the storefront, it doesn't always have the stuff that I want to see or whatever, because you now have trusted individuals who are going to tell you about good games.
And then the idea with the Steam Explorers program on the other side is that no longer is it just the case that if your game essentially didn't do well at launch, which is currently a huge reality and a huge problem, that you're fucked permanently.
Yeah.
So the idea is to sort of crowdsource. This is what they're doing. They're crowdsourcing the quality control, right?
Well, I've been thinking about this in tandem with the potential upcoming Twitch changes.
Yes.
Where basically, because the question with
let me add one piece here, which is that the last thing they're doing is they're adding a ton of completely visible data to both the store pages and to the curation pages. So curators will now know how many people move to a store page from their curation page, from their recommendation. And this is an important sort of segue to,
because the question is, so on Twitch, there was the idea of like Amazon selling. So Amazon owns Twitch, and the idea of Amazon now allowing sales of games through a Twitch stream, where if somebody's playing a particular game, then that person essentially becomes a salesperson for that game. And so if somebody buys the game through the Twitch stream, then the streamer will get a small cut of the sale.
5%, I believe.
Yeah, 5% or something like that. So the question is this where Steam is going to go through? Because it seems like that's the next logical step, is basically by being a curator, you point people at a game. If they buy it, then you get a piece of the pie, right? And so this actually opens up an entirely new profession, which is a game salesperson.
Yeah.
Right. So
you could be a prospector. You could literally be a prospector.
Yeah,
right?
because so this is capitalism at work here, right? So we have a market problem, which is there's lots of good games out there, but now there's so many that nobody knows how to find the one that they want. It's kind of like when you're like, oh, I need to get a new car. There's a lot of cars out there, right? What do? You go talk to a car salesperson, right? And then they tell you all the different things, and then they try to get you to buy shit, right? So similarly, now we have a new profession emerging from the muck, of just there being hundreds of thousands of games coming out a year. What was it on mobile? 270,000 games came out last year. On Steam, not even close to that many, but you know,
4,000.
Yeah. So the idea here is there's going to be people who, there's entertainers like Twitch streamers. You've got Let's Players on YouTube. So these are people who have built their careers around being an entertainment figure around games. Now you're going to have people whose job is to just find good games and recommend them. Yeah. Right.
So it's going to be real interesting. Really.
Well, it's particularly interesting because that job does already exist.
Yeah.
In news sites, right, that try to surface good stuff.
Well, no, because they review games.
Yeah, they also review stuff,
and they will give bad reviews, right? Yeah. As a salesperson, you're not supposed to give bad reviews. You're making money off of it,
but you also have to be a trusted salesperson, right? Which means that
you can't
only
recommend
give
bad
good
stuff.
reviews, but they're also supposed to be trustworthy reviews.
Yeah,
well,
you just don't talk about bad stuff. As a salesperson, you're just like, Well,
I think it's an interesting second piece, I think, to the overall review puzzle problem, which is a lot of the marketing money has dried up on the internet, and so in the past couple of years, and so games review sites have been having a hell of a time. And if you look at this on the same sort of side, where they say, okay, anything that achieves a score, say over like 7 on as a review from our main website, we'll put on our curation page or something like that. Then they have this nice sort of virtuous circle, right? Where they're a trusted news source,
and people don't have to read about bad games because
you're just like, oh, these are the good games, and then they're adding all these tag sorting features and all this other stuff. So you can actually go into a curation page and say, what does PC Gamer, for example, recommend with regard to RPG games? What are their top 10? And they're adding a bundling thing. So if you're a curator also, you can essentially put together a list of like your top 10 games in any given category.
It'd be interesting too if then as a player I could go and be like, I just want to buy that whole bundle.
Yes, that's what I think that's what they're going to do. And they're talking about doing bundle sales and all this stuff. So it's interesting. They're essentially making much more of an ecosystem, right? They're adding another player.
Well, the reason that this works though is because Steam has decided to act as a producer of infrastructure.
Correct.
Right. Because
They're
the only way
they're
you
moving
can,
away from content.
yeah, the only
creation.
way you can develop a new market that allows basically capitalism, free market economics to come into play on top of it, where you can get true competition and surface new professions and sources of revenue and all this kind of stuff, is by building infrastructure.
Yep.
And then setting people free on top of it and just see what happens, right?
the other
It's kind of
really-
like what EVE Online does with its game.
Yeah.
It does exactly the same thing, right? It
They're like,
builds
we don't know. They're
infrastructure.
like, we don't know how to make a good game. We'll
Yeah.
just put tools in place.
We
and
just
let
put the pipes
players
in.
let
Yeah.
the players make a game out
The
of
other
it.
interesting thing about it is that they're moving away from, this is a huge thing for indies in particular. So the key stealing problem or key fraud is a huge issue where like when Crashlands launched, we get thousands of emails requesting keys from us. People who are acting like they're huge YouTubers or who just weren't acting like it, but just figured we wouldn't look or ask them, who the fuck are you? Why do you want this game for free? And this is a huge problem.
And then they turn around and resell that
Exactly.
key.
So those keys get
on
resold
G2A.
on everything else.
Yeah.
So there's essentially this gray market economy, as we refer to it, where it's not quite illegal, but you're definitely it's basically defrauding
unethical.
people. Yeah. And so the nice thing is with this next thing, what they're going to be doing is allowing us to, for example, on our end, when we launch a new game, we would be able to search for curators who have covered a particular genre of game, and then we can just send them the game directly through Steam without a code, which means the code economy, that sort of gray market code economy, is going to dry up considerably because most of it comes from people defrauding people during launch season.
Well, it's all on the platform anyway, which means also everybody who you would normally be sending a key to is now going to end up having to exist as a player in this new ecosystem. And so, yes, that just goes away. So it's going to have some pretty cool, broad impacts.
I think we should start a curation page, guys. We got to get in on this.
I don't know. We got a lot
Wait,
of
if we
stuff to do.
sell,
We'll just put Crashlands.
here's
in
a question: if we sell one of our own games,
Do we get a
do
cut?
we get the extra 5%?
Presumably.
Because it comes out of their presumably it comes out of their 30%.
Yeah, well, I mean, but think of the rationale for this, right? Is that the percentage that the store gets is basically their contribution for doing the
infrastructure,
services,
the marketing,
but it's the infrastructure plus then marketing, so plus surfacing of your game. But if you take this is why Steam also just lets us sell keys,
right,
without giving them a cut, right? Because they don't because what we're doing in that case is we're selling the game ourselves. They're not doing the work, and we're bringing customers to their platform, which means if they have to pay a little extra now because they're handling the downloads and all that kind of stuff, right? That cost is small relative to bringing players to their group.
So they're willing to eat that, penny.
Right. They're willing to eat that little bit. Exactly. Because it doesn't hurt them any really.
less than
Yeah.
a penny.
It
But
just doesn't hurt them any. And they also know that they can sell way more copies of a game than we can. So it comes out in their favor. And it's the same deal here. If their cut includes basically marketing and surfacing the game, but they can only do that with a small subset of games.
Right.
And they're doing with their statistical stuff, they're doing a good job of doing that better and surfacing more games. But if we can surf it ourselves, then we should be able to get more of our cut back. Right. And that's how most things either should or ought to work, or should or do work, depending on what the thing is.
Yeah. So this
It's exciting.
This discussion kind of ties into one of our questions as well. So I'm kind of lacing some questions into our news this week. But we had a question from Griffin962 who says, "Do you pay much attention to in-depth analysis and critique of other video games to learn from the successes and failures of other games?"
This is what we were talking about yesterday, Adam, with regard to an information theory.
Right.
Yes.
So before we hit that, kind of the connection here is the idea that one of the big reasons for the curation change is that I think Valve recognizes that they have historically have been unable to find a way to recognize whether a game is going to be successful.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
And
The classic example is Stardew Valley.
yeah,
They said they had no fucking idea that thing was going to go boom.
yeah,
Well, and they knew it would do pretty well.
pretty good. I mean,
right?
it's a well constructed game,
But
right?
that thing went bonkers.
It went ridiculous. Yeah. And so the idea here is even somebody like Valve, who has information, like in-depth information about almost every aspect of a game's launch, right? They cannot figure out what makes a game succeed, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so the question there is, what's the value of listening to critique of other games and analysis about what works and what doesn't work and that kind of thing
When nobody actually knows.
Yeah. Well, I think that's the follow-up point, which is, and we talk about this with the launch of Crashlands, where when we said we were going to launch on all 3 platforms simultaneously, everyone told us no. They said, no. Don't do that. Don't do that. It's going to be bad. You're going to cannibalize all your sales.
And specifically the phrasing that we kept hearing was nobody does this.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Which isn't really a good reason not to do it. It's just, the question is, has someone done it and it sucked really bad?
Yeah. Because if somebody says you shouldn't do this, it's not going to work. Nobody does this. Well, if you say nobody does it, then you can't say the first couple.
How would
things,
you know? It's
right? Because you can't know if it doesn't work. Yeah.
So Adam, walk us into this.
Information cascade.
So I've been reading this book called Algorithms to Live By, which is, it starts off a little rocky, but it gets really good as you get into it. And it's been kind of fun because it's basically this couple of writers, I think, who have been just talking to lots of computer scientists and saying, can you just walk us through something that you're an expert in, some computer science idea, and how we can apply that to just life decision making, right?
Is the drunken walk in there?
Not yet. I'm about 3/4 of the way through, so haven't hit that one yet. But the fun thing about it is that we make a lot of our decisions. It turns out that a lot of the decisions that we're making actually just have a basis in computer science that we just didn't know were there, and discovering that kind of clarifies thinking, which has been really interesting. In particular, and related to this, is this idea of an information cascade.
Sounds
right?
cool.
And it sounds cool, but also once you know what it is, it seems to have nothing to do with what it's called, really. But
yeah, I was kind of thinking that when you explained it yesterday. I was like, I don't get it.
yeah,
Well, I get it, but I don't get why it's called.
Right.
What is it?
And it does have a very specific, like, computer science-y, definition with all this, proofs and all kinds of stuff. But the gist of it and how it applies to real life is that there's this really interesting problem that comes from the case where you have multiple people who are all trying to make the same decision.
So, for example, when do we launch a game?
Yeah, when do we launch a game, or should we launch the game on multiple platforms at once, right? And they have access to their own private information about that.
So basically, things that I know that you don't know, or vice versa.
Yeah, or not even necessarily that you don't know. Just there are things you know, right?
Correct.
There are things you know about it, and I don't know what you know, right? I might know the things that you also know. I just don't know that I know.
You don't know
that
that you know that.
Sure,
exactly.
right.
So it's a little weird, right? But the idea is that the private information is just stuff I just don't know what you know, right? So as Butterscotch Shenanigans, as a studio, that's the thing we did. We launched the game on all these platforms, right? Which means people looking from the outside are going to say, we don't know what made you decide to do that, except we talk about it on the podcast. But normally you would have literally no idea. You would just see us launch a game on a bunch of platforms at once. And even though we do talk about it and we talk about that decision, we don't talk at all about all of the factors that went into that. There are many more than what we've actually just said, right?
So people looking from the outside are going to assume that we know things
right.
that they don't know.
Right. Or again, it's not even that. It's they don't know what we know, right? They don't know the reason we made those decisions. So what that means then is that if you're all in the same space trying to make the same decision, you have basically what people do is they infer somebody else's private knowledge based on what they do, right?
Oh, I got a good time for this.
Right. So you see you're some other studio, you see us launch a game, you see that it does fine, right? And we launch it on all platforms. So you look at that and you say, hey, launching all platforms can make you successful. We're going to do that same thing, right? But it might actually be the case that this was a bad decision and this was actually the worst possible outcome, et cetera. And we might actually have the information that would allow us to find that, there's all kinds of stuff and nobody else has done it, et cetera. But the best you can do is just look at what somebody else has done and try to infer why. Try to infer what they
you
knew.
Look at what somebody else did. You look at what you believe to be the outcome,
and then you try to make a decision.
and then
I'm going to wrap this into the Great British Bake Show.
Okay.
Right now.
Right.
So they have a technical challenge, the second challenge every episode, where they get a new recipe that they've never seen before. Most of the time they have no idea what it's even supposed to look like or taste like or anything. And they get these vague directions they have to build it. And usually there's like one person in the room who has built one before or like knows what to do. And there's this thing that always happens where they're working on something and then people are looking around, right? So
they're trying to figure out who has.
People look for the most confident person in the room.
Exactly. And they're like, okay, she's like baking that for an extra 10 minutes. Oh God, should I bake it?
Do I need to do that?
No, I don't think she's right. I feel like it's going to be dry if she does that. And then they're like, and then they make a decision based on that.
Yep.
To the point
So they're not looking at the recipe.
No, they're looking at what
somebody else is doing with
but
the
you don't know
assumption
why
is-
they're doing it.
exactly.
Yeah.
But the assumption is that they're doing something different
because
So-
they know
because
something.
they know something.
But then here's the inevitable outcome.
Yes,
right.
which you've
The
seen
inevitable
in
outcome
the show. Yeah.
is that because it's about confidence, right?
Yep.
And so as soon as somebody makes a confident decision, so in this case, cook something for an extra 10 minutes, right?
Mhm.
And somebody else now looks at that who is not confident. If they are not confident in their private information, then they're going to infer that other person is
Knows,
acting on better
right.
information.
That person is confident because they have it,
Exactly.
not just
And
for
so,
no reason.
Right. And so they're going to go now do the same thing. The moment they do that, then the amount of confidence that everybody else needs to keep doing what they were doing
Goes up
goes up.
because everybody's like, "Wow, these two people
Yeah.
are
Yep.
both doing the same
You can
thing."
see. I'm telling
but
you,
I'm
watch
not.
the show. It's in there. It's great. This is so
Yeah.
funny. Okay, cool.
Well, it's like it is the inevitable outcome of any group dynamic.
This
right?
this also reminds me of that line experiment where it's a social psychology experiment where you get a group of 5 people together where 4 people are plants and one person is the subject.
Yeah, right.
Right. It's
And
the
they show
conformity one,
they show you 3 lines on a screen where 2 of them are super long and one of them is clearly like half as long as the others, right? And then you go down the row and you ask the people like which line is the longest, and all the plants say that the clearly shortest line is the longest one. And then more than half the time,
Yeah.
the subject will just agree with the group because they feel like everybody else seems very confident about
Right.
this.
There must be something they're
It's
missing.
just an
Even
information
though
cascade.
even though I can clearly see right in front of me that this line is half as long as the others, why would the other 4 people say that it's longer
Yeah, but
unless
now-
it actually is and
Yeah.
I'm missing something?
And so, but here's the
right?
crazy part is, you do that, and then now all of a sudden, that person, when they see a shorter line, they're going to now think that it's the longer line, right?
Yeah.
Must
Now-
be.
But
Somehow.
the reason this
Maybe
is
I just
important-
have some kind of a deficiency when it comes to line measurement.
right. But the reason this is important is because this is a runaway process. So it's not only that you bring everybody to one outcome, but now, because nobody's actually confident because everybody knows they're missing information, right? Which means now say you're that first person who baked the thing for an extra 10 minutes, right? And then everybody else did it too. You don't know why they all did it too,
Right.
right? It turns out they did it because you did it. But now you're extra confident in that decision that you've
'Cause
made
you're looking
because
around, you're like,
everybody else did it,
I
right?
did the right thing.
And
Yeah.
then now all of a sudden a tradition is born.
Yep.
Yeah,
This
and
is just-
nobody,
this is just the way we
nobody
do
knows
things.
why, but everybody feels like it's the right thing to do. And now anybody else coming into the system sees what everybody else did and they do the same thing because that's the way that must make sense, right? And so on. And depending on what the process is, some of these processes are like, the example that they give in the book is in trying to put bids down on a place where people are going to want to dig oil up, right? And basically every company has done a survey, but surveys are really unreliable.
Okay. Yeah.
And they're all private,
Right.
right? So nobody actually knows how much is there, and everybody has different information about how much is there. But now it's a bidding war, right? So the moment that somebody is really confident there's a lot there and bids a lot,
Then it goes
everybody else
nuts.
starts to believe it is too.
Right.
Because they don't want to miss out on the great stuff. that
Right.
they're-
And now everybody's only bidding because everybody else is bidding, and they start bidding higher and higher and higher, even though now none of it is based in the reality at all.
Right.
And that's the key is that for processes where the outcome can continue to change,
Right.
then just the fact that everybody's playing this game continues to change the outcome, and it moves it further and further and further from the reality that the original thing was supposed to be based on.
So where do you see this intersecting with making games and launching?
One thing
games?
is it intersects everywhere with every business decision.
Well,
that
every
you ever
time
make.
there's a group of people with asymmetrical information
Yeah.
making decisions where they can see each other's decisions.
Right.
Right. Anytime that happens, there's a distinct possibility, I would say it's probable
yeah.
that people are not making decisions purely based on the information they have.
No, and we all know, or at least you better know that you have incomplete information.
Yeah.
So of course you don't.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And so you try to fill the gaps of your knowledge with other people's actions, and then
But other people's
everybody-
actions don't actually have anything
other
to do with their knowledge.
other people are doing the same thing with you.
Yeah.
Right. And so ultimately everybody just does random shit, basically.
Well,
that
no, it's
doesn't
not
actually-
random. It's that they're doing the information that they're using is now the actions that are decoupled from reality of other people.
Right.
So now you're decoupled from reality entirely.
So any market, any
industry,
any
any
industry
industry knowledge actually would be really heavily likely to be a
it's the
product.
same thing with
Yeah.
like the stock market and all these things, right?
yeah, which is why and when I started studying finance, it was coming into it, I was like, oh yeah, like stocks have prices because they have a certain value, right?
No.
But then when you learn about finance and how the prices of stocks are estimated, you learn that there's a layer of like 30 assumptions that goes into each valuation.
Mhm.
And then those assumptions are just taken as a given. right? And then other analysts will look at the other analysis that's been done on a stock, and they'll go, well, all these other analysts are making this set of assumptions. I mean, they must know something, right? Like, why is everybody else
the
assuming?
expert said this.
Yeah. And so then everything is just based on.
Yeah. So I guess with regard to how, so back to the question, with regard to how we look at other games and other game launches or whatever else, how would you say we approach that?
Well, we try to, as much as possible, base our decisions on what seems like it would make sense, not what on other people have done, and not even necessarily on what the data that we can come up with shows, because the thing is that data behaves the same way that people do in this context, right? Is when you see data, you just see the outcome, right? It's decoupled from reality in a lot of ways, and you don't know all the ways in which it has been decoupled. You don't know all the assumptions that went into it. You don't know who got it. And there's a lot of stuff that you don't know unless it's ridiculously well annotated, and it literally never is. Right. So it's every time you look at data is the same problem. It's actually asymmetric. The data is the public information, right? But there's hidden private information behind it. The private information, which is actually the world, right, and how it works, is actually what you care about. But those things are decoupled. So
and the data also is going to be missing so many things. Like, for example, if you launched, if Stardew Valley, launched a year later. We don't know what that would have meant. Yeah. Right.
It might have done 10 times better or 10 times worse or exactly the same.
Yeah. Or even if it launched a week later. Yeah. Maybe it would have launched at the same time as some huge AAA game that just completely took over Steam, and all of a sudden it just didn't get the traction that it needed, Or
maybe it wouldn't compete with a AAA game anyway. So if it had, it would have been fine. Yeah. Right. Because there are all these assumptions that you go read that people have been making, such as, if you launch your game in competition with a AAA game, then you're going to have a bad launch, right? Which may or may not be true. Nobody's tested it on purpose in a broad scale. And even if they had, how would you actually know how to interpret the data? Because again, you don't actually have access to their private information. And even if you did,
you just can't know. What would you do with it?
You just can't know, which we've said before too.
Yeah.
You just literally can't know. And so instead of worrying all the time about what other people are doing and whether you're making the right move based on what they're doing,
just ignore them.
Yeah, just think about what seems to make the most sense.
It's good to, because when we do market research, for example, we might say, how is it that a lot of the games that have been hits have approached their marketing run up? For example, we did this a few weeks ago, and we get this big list, but it's not necessarily to tell us what to do. It's mainly about generating ideas. Yeah, for us about how we could approach, if that makes sense. Right. We're not trying to get a recipe. We're trying to say, oh, cool, they did this. They did this thing. It had this outcome, it seems like. Or they had this, Twitter event or whatever else, or they used a bunch of social media, or, they ran a collectibles campaign before they launched or whatever else. There's a lot of ways to approach it. And I think it's mainly
but
about.
When you said earlier about, and it had this outcome, that's the problem is we actually don't know any of the outcomes of any of the actions that people have taken. Right. And we can't. There's just no way. We don't know how any of the things they did impacted their success. There's no way to get that.
All we can do is look at the total accumulation of the publicly visible stuff that they did. Mm-hmm. And then we can look at a rough estimation of some outcomes, but we don't know how
you can dig for.
We don't know how accurate any of those things are, and we also don't know how they connect. Right.
Yeah. So even digging for correlations, because you're going to find spurious correlations all the time.
Adam, it sounds like we need your talk that you're supposed to give at GDC.
They didn't want it.
Yeah.
So now we'll just use that private information ourselves and for our podcast.
Yeah. Adam submitted a GDC talk called what?
Everyone is wrong.
Everyone is wrong.
Subtitled all of the time.
I thought it was everyone is wrong about everything all of the time.
That might have been. That subtitle was key though.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, so this is just really important though when you're trying to make decisions about stuff. Is you gotta, and it's not to say do whatever you want. It doesn't matter. That's not it at all. It's think about kind of the rational course of things, given what you feel like you're allowed to know, and just pay attention to what your assumptions are, so you know where you have wiggle room and all of that, and just do the best you can. Try to understand how people work. Try to understand how markets work. Do all of that stuff, but then know that in the end you just have to make a decision and go for it and see what you get. Because I mean, it is the case that even though, we don't know what makes a good game that people like and that kind of thing. So we wouldn't read a review for that, but we might read a review to find out what do reviewers complain about? Yep. Because if we can keep that out of our game,
if we can keep reviewers happy, then it's good.
But we don't know. It might actually not matter, but it's certainly going to be better.
It didn't matter for No Man's Sky.
Right.
So
right. But it is probably
one
still
of the
going to
most
be
successful
better.
indie game. Actually, probably in like the top 3 most successful indie games of all
yeah.
time.
But here's the question: what if it had matched the hype?
Yeah.
How much more successful could it have been?
Probably not that much more.
Yeah, there seems
it
like
was
there-
incredibly
It seems like there's a cap on it. It wasn't
Yeah.
as successful as like
So maybe
Grand
if-
Theft Auto.
Maybe a fun challenge for this week, because we're getting into the hot duck challenge.
Hot duck.
Hot duck. But maybe a fun challenge for this next week for podcast listeners is to keep your eye out and look for an instance where maybe something in your life, whether it's on the Great British Bake Show or something at work or with your family, might be due just to an information cascade.
When nobody actually knows anything.
Yeah.
And
I'm
everybody.
telling you, it's every like when I was
Once you see it.
back when I was a scientist, I would ask people this question. I guess when I was actively doing what people would call science, would be more specific. What I would be doing these experiments, and we'd have these protocols, right? So I could go to the internet, you put up a protocol for say like heat shocking yeast, so you can put genes into them, for example. Right?
I mean, we've all been.
So there's
did that on Saturday.
There's an established protocol for this, but of course, if you do a Google search and kind of see what the people have done, there is something like 1 million variations on the general theme. And you sit down and you look at that and you look at where things vary, and then you just ask like, why? Why is it this way? How come I can use this reagent instead of this one? How come I can do it at this temperature instead of this one? And whatever. And the thing is, like, it turns out it just doesn't matter and nobody knows. But if you talk to any one person who has a protocol, they just fucking swear by that protocol. Yeah. It's really specific. It has exact times and numbers. And they're like,
and you're like, well, Steve seems real confident about this.
Yeah,
I'm going to go ahead and do that.
Well, and the thing is I was trained by other people. And the protocols that I had were the protocols that they had that I, might have tweaked a tiny bit over time and so on. But still, like, those are the ones that I would swear by. But somebody else would swear just as hard that something else also worked as fine. It was because
they'd be like, "Fuck, this works well."
It is because we didn't
swear by it.
Yeah.
Like, what would be the point in us now doing 1,000 versions of that same thing to test every kind of thing to see which ones actually work?
Works well enough. Who cares?
It works, right? But the key is, though, that we don't know why, but yet we still swear by that thing, right? And insist that it is the best and most important thing. And just like, this is how it is. So that's actually how. So if you think traditions don't live in science, like science is built on traditions.
Yeah.
Every protocol. That
Everything related to humans needing to know things.
And it's because of information cascades.
Yeah. It's just the way we do things.
Yeah.
But
even if I was actually listening to I think it was a podcast episode, they were talking about, actually, no shit, it was the same book again, wasn't it? It was the same book. They were talking about this problem of the inevitable outcome of competition. So say like you're in a small town, they have a couple competing stores, right? Mm-hmm. If they're not both open all of the time, then basically they can steal each other's customers, right?
Right.
So they either have to be all open all the time or have a truce. But now there's a strong incentive for somebody to break that truce all the time, right? So it's an unstable equilibrium. But all you have to do is impose some third-party authority that prevents that from happening, right? And so there's an argument that this is actually the origin of things like the Sabbath and that kind of stuff, like the day of rest, is to have that third-party enforcement to allow people to actually not work and be healthy and that kind of stuff, because there was no other way to do it. Because people
it's a runaway system.
Yeah, it is guaranteed to be a runaway system.
Otherwise, that's where crunch comes from,
right? And so there's this argument that actually a lot of these origins of traditions, and especially ones that are religious based, right, or religion based, because religion is the ultimate third party, right? Where it says like, I will literally just murder you out of existence if you don't do what this rule book
You'll be
says,
smote.
Yeah, you'll be smitten.
It's not quite right.
It's not quite right. But the idea
love not working.
The idea that is that there are all these things that we do because that there are these rules written in these books, right? That the reason that they have hung on and been so successful is because they allow us to break out of what would otherwise be these information cascades that are runaway systems.
So they kind of force you to step back and reevaluate.
Yeah, but we don't think about it. We don't realize that that's why we're doing it.
Just do it.
We just do it. And it's like, I was
because everybody else is doing it. They must know something.
Right. And we talk about this a lot with like self-help things and that kind of stuff. It's the same kind of deal. Like somebody tells you, just go do this, right? Write your 3 pages a morning longhand, that kind of stuff, right? They're telling you to do a thing and swearing by it because it does work, right? Or meditation, like all these kinds of things. It does work. But the question is, what is it actually doing? If you now take that step back and ask, what the hell is this thing actually doing? And then just do that, whatever it is. Like,
can I get it this another way?
Can I get it in some other way? And now all of a sudden you're no longer just following a tradition. You're now understanding actually some fundamental thing about the world. And then you get to exploit that in potentially much more.
Right. Though to be fair, most of us are too busy doing things to be able to think about it.
Well, the thing is, that's the other value of them, right?
Yeah, it's an information shortcut.
Yeah. You just use traditions to get stuff done. And then when it really matters for some reason,
then you step back.
Then you can step back.
Cool.
All right,
so be on the lookout.
Yeah, so the challenge, the podcast challenge
Yeah.
for this week is
Find an information cascade.
Yeah, find an information cascade. What's the name of this challenge?
Just in general or this specific?
Don't go chasing waterfalls.
Don't go chasing waterfalls. Challenge. Right? Look for an information. Look for a thing that you're doing or somebody else is doing.
Should we have people submit this as a podcast?
Yeah, if you find something
Either on a
interesting,
podcast question or on
submit
Twitter.
it.
We'll keep an eye out.
Submit it. Yeah, because this is interesting.
All right, let's talk about the hot duck.
So the hot duck challenge. I like the fact that we're doing these challenges
It's
all
fun,
of a sudden.
yeah.
So the hot duck challenge came from last week, where the challenge was to decouple yourself from distractionary items like notifications on your phone. So just turn them off, just straight up all the way for every app, so that your phone can never vibrate at you and interrupt you from doing things. To uninstall applications like Twitter or Reddit or
Anything where
whatever.
you just scroll, basically.
Anything where you
The
get a
metric.
sort of a subtle,
Actually, yeah.
where you get subtle sprinklings of information that is generally shallow and has no context or meaning, and that you just do it for a brief dopamine drip, right? So that was the hot duck challenge from last week. And we got a couple podcast questions about it as well, but do we want to talk about it first about
Yes, well, so because Adam was already doing it, so I started it last week. And so the hilarious thing was that immediately afterwards, after we wrapped up the podcast last week, Adam and Andy went to the grocery store to go grab lunch meat and stuff. And of course, Adam was like, "All my notifications are off." So
including the ability for people to call you.
so this is the one place where this is problematic, which is that I wanted some Cheetos.
Yeah, it was problematic
Adam was
for you.
It was. And Adam was
Not
at
for
the
me.
grocery store, and I was just wanted like a 99-cent bag of Cheetos, and I couldn't get a hold of him. And I called Andy, but Andy's phone was downstairs here in the office, and so I had to go get my own goddamn Cheetos.
Yeah.
So that was the only downfall I've seen of it.
Except, you know,
But
if
again,
you-
it wasn't a downfall though, because for the person who set the notifications, it worked perfectly because I saved 99 cents.
Adam's life was great.
I didn't have to go looking for Cheetos, and like, of course, it wouldn't have bothered me had I done it. Right. But having to not have had to have worried about that, like that probably improved my life a little bit.
But
day.
also, you didn't really need those Cheetos.
I mean,
your life is better because I
really-
think you wouldn't got them. Anyway.
I would've got
really,
Cheetos.
but really, I mean, you were acting on an impulse. You're just like, I got a craving for junk food, basically.
You were basically just acting on another dopamine drip that you were then trying to enact.
don't you go there, you son of a.
You were just enacting it through
You keep my Cheetos out of this.
the dopamine drip you wish that I still had.
So really,
on.
yeah.
Right, fuck you guys. Anyway, so the important point is, so I did it.
So that's true. This is healthy for everybody around you.
But I did do it for the rest of the week. And it's been interesting. So I think because I mentioned to you guys that time simultaneously moved slower and faster. What I mean by that is I was able to do basically more stuff with more clarity in a shorter amount of time, and I felt better, period. So one of the things I did is I got the YouTube Music app. And so I would just listen to music instead of, browsing around on the
There's
internet.
a YouTube Music app.
Yeah. If you have YouTube Red, you can just
Is
listen to
that
music.
different than Google Play Music?
Yeah. I don't know what Google's doing. Who knows? But yeah, so
Google Play Music.
So I just committed because my annoying habit is Imgur, not Reddit or anything, but Imgur. So that was my thing. I was like, I'm not going to get on that one.
It's basically what Reddit is.
It is,
It's just a
basically.
shortcut.
And so it was really good actually. I enjoyed it quite a bit. I think the only thing as far as being able to be connected to by people on occasion was problematic, but it was also nice because it gives you the opportunity to, like, whenever you look at your phone, then you actually go do the thing you're trying to do. And that was the nice thing for me, actually, from having all the notifications turned off, because I could actually go Google something without getting pulled away.
Yeah, without looking at something
Yeah.
else instead. or added something to your to-do list.
Yeah. Or I could just
whatever,
go, I'd be like, oh, I'm going to go check my phone now. And then I'd go do that.
On purpose.
Instead
Right.
Instead of your
Instead
phone.
of your phone checking you.
Yeah. Which is what happened. So yeah, I did feel a lot more deliberate, which was nice. But yeah,
pretty good.
that's my take.
It's pretty good.
My
Yeah.
hot take on the hot
Me
duck.
too. It's the same.
Cool.
Same,
All right. What's the
same all
question we
around.
got?
First question comes from 30 Extra.
Ooh, that's very
Extra of what? I don't know. There's just 30 more of it
There's
than
a lot
what
more.
a normal person would have.
Mhm.
So 30 Extra says, I have a counterpoint regarding your dismissal of TV.
Hit me.
So we threw TV in as well as being a thing.
Yep.
Really kind of number one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, for most people, yeah.
Mhm.
Wouldn't you say there are select shows that require active viewing and even make important social commentary. Don't we see a bit of ourselves in the characters? To me, that seems valuable.
Oh yeah. So I wouldn't say, I wouldn't say that, reading a book that is, of interest and good to you is bad, or that, but we're not saying that you should just be working all the time. That's an important note. It's just about being deliberate. So if you just crash in front of the TV, literally you just sit down and turn on the TV.
Well, importantly, with the commercials.
Yeah. With commercials and everything.
Yeah.
Even without,
you just, I mean, like if you're not, it's about being deliberate, right? That's literally it. So if it's the case, you're like, I'm going to watch show X. So for me,
because I relate to the characters and I believe it makes an important social commentary.
Or because like this show just makes me feel good. The Great British Bake Show is just like somehow the most relaxing thing on the planet.
But so that's the dangerous one though. That one you got to be careful about when you make a decision.
Well, yeah, but I only watch it with my wife.
Yeah. I mean, if you got some other system, but the reason can't be it makes me feel good because that's just a dopamine drip.
That's how you get into it.
That's how you find a problem.
So we talked about this though with the constructive vegging, right? Last week as well. Someone asked about what about vegging out? Do you guys have veg time? Mm-hmm. And again, I think it's just about being deliberate. I'm not going to be. I don't want to sit down in front of the computer and just scroll through images on Imgur. But if it's the case that I want to go sort of just like relax for a bit, then I'll either like take a bath, go work in the yard, or watch the Great British Bake Show. Those are the things I do to get that particular calmness. So I think it wouldn't be correct to say that you shouldn't be, acquiring whatever it is that you need with regards to those things. It's just about being deliberate about it.
Yeah.
Right?
Well,
isn't it?
It's the same idea as if you want to be a writer and be a really weird one that does all kinds of crazy, like E. Cummings, right? Does really weird shit. You can't get away with that until you also really know the rules really well.
Right.
So that,
because I think you tend to take the path of least resistance over time, right? Mm-hmm. So if your three hobbies are like gardening, taking a bath, or watching this TV show, there's two issues. One is the episodes will run out.
Yeah.
Right.
And now you got to feed that drip somehow.
Yeah. Now you find another thing gets slotted into the void, but also watching the TV show is the most instantly gratifying and also lowest effort activity.
And also the easiest to transition into an even worse activity.
Exactly.
Of watching some other shit.
So it's basically, it's
get less value.
It's not that it's bad in and of itself.
Right.
It's that you have to recognize how to control it.
Because what's the worst thing that gardening cascades into? Like from this whole being thinking.
You just get so fucking many cucumbers.
Right. Well, no, I think it's the question of being deliberate again. I think
sure.
it's literally it.
But if you're not good at being deliberate, which is the whole point of all of this.
Yeah.
Right. Well, then you should not put yourself in a situation.
Correct. But the difference is between simply, sitting yourself down to watch TV broadly,
just TV,
to go watch the TV for like 3 hours is, I think, very different from sitting down to watch like Game of Thrones or like this person's talking about watching a particular thing for a particular reason
with a person.
Yeah. With a person oftentimes, or even, going to see a particular movie or something like that. Yeah. I mean, I would not wager that those are wastes of your time or bad for you in that sense. I think you're on that line of being deliberate, and that's just a thing. It's just how like anything could be bad for you.
Well, but here's the question. I think you're because why can't we just sometimes deliberately waste time? Because I think what you're trying to do is you're trying to say like, this isn't a waste of time. I'm just saying it is. I'm not saying you can't waste time. I'm just saying.
No, but that's what I'm saying. I'm saying that's exactly what I'm saying is that you can deliberately do things that are just for you to just not do a thing. Right. I mean, that's what we're getting at.
For me, that's still just bad.
In what regard?
Like, it just
in
doesn't
what
get
regard? In what fucking regard? I mean,
like you're clearly offended by this, which is why like you're so passionate about this British Bake Off show, right?
No. I mean, I think it's the idea that taking time to relax is a waste. A waste of time.
No.
Seems very puritanical to me.
No, it's because you just keep on redefining relax.
Okay,
right?
well, let's
because right now
you define some things.
You've defined relax could mean taking a bath, doing gardening, or the thing that we keep on saying you shouldn't be doing, which is like just sitting down and watching TV, right? And then you've tried to define a very specific circumstance of watching TV that makes that okay because you want.
This is exactly the podcast question is.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's
so
exactly
what?
Right.
So my point is.
Let me get to that. There's another question,
which is why podcasts are fine.
By Flavin, inspired by episode 91. I purged Twitter and my RSS reader, but while podcasts got a special okay from Adam.
Yeah. The arbiter.
Why are they?
No.
Wait. My
this is important,
podcast's
though.
got a special okay from Adam. Why are they any better? When I do a boring task, so like
Yard work.
washing the dishes
Washing
or
dishes.
mowing the lawn or something, the familiar voices in my ear give me a dopamine drip. Am I training my brain to never be bored?
Yes. I actually turned off podcasts this weekend
Shit.
in response to this question. Because I saw that question last week and I was like, that's right. I am being inconsistent. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna turn off my podcasts. And on Sunday, for the first time and I don't even know how long, I like went and did chores for the day without having podcasts on or doing anything. I was just doing chores. So I went out and I did 5 hours of yard work.
Mhm.
Podcast free, just me in the world, doing yard work and thinking about stuff. It was fantastic.
So it would be,
And then, but the weird thing was, because normally, like the moment I go do a thing, the trigger in my brain, I'm like, oh, I need to get a podcast running. Like that's just the default in my brain. At the end of that day, I went to go like brush my teeth or something. And again, habit is like turn on a podcast, right?
I got like 8
While you're
seconds.
brushing
to
your
brush.
teeth.
Yeah.
I got like a whole minute here.
Getting ready for the evening, right? And so I'm like up and ready to do that. And I turned on podcast and I was like, I don't want to listen to this. And I just turned it back off. Like I got away from it just enough that I was like, actually, yeah, this isn't.
This is
really
why I'm
great,
wondering,
right?
maybe we have a difference because I don't listen to podcasts constantly. I also very rarely watch TV shows. So I'm wondering if the difference is essentially it's a balance question, right?
It's always a balance question.
It's always that's what I'm trying to get at.
Well,
is
I
like
would, yeah. So
the
I
idea that it's categorically wrong for you to
No,
either
but
listen to podcasts,
it's also just
watch a
yeah.
show,
It's not
read a book,
categorically. It's not
you know what I mean?
wrong. There's not like an ethical, moral
Well, I mean,
decision here. Right?
but we're calling it a waste of time. You are injecting. There's a judgment.
there's a judgment.
You
Yeah, yeah.
can't- yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, but the thing is, I still waste time sometimes
Mhm.
by listening to podcasts or watching a TV show or whatever, right? And I don't then go back and look at that time and be like, I wish that I hadn't wasted time. Therefore, I'm just going to decide that that wasn't a waste of time, right? I can look back on it and just comfortably say, yes, I wasted some time right there. That's fine. That's a thing I do from time to
But
time.
I think that's the thing is that the definition is weird to me, right? Because like if you're extracting some value out of it, right?
No, I'm like really not. That's the whole problem. Like at the time, I'm getting that dopamine drip, right? It's like to me, it's the value comes in the long-term impact on my brain, right?
Okay.
And that doesn't mean I have to like learn something fundamental or whatever. It just means, do I feel like I'm in a slightly different and better and more interesting place as a consequence of stuff that I have?
Well, yeah. So
right?
this comes to the question of, so there's a book called Amusing Ourselves to Death, which refers
Seems relevant.
it comes from I think it was written in the late 80s, and it is specifically about television, but it applies equally today. And it refers to, there's a book called Understanding Media written by Marshall McLuhan in the 60s. Which is a very sort of dense. I tried to read it and I was like, "Meh." It's a very academic kind of dense book, full of lots of jargon. But fortunately, lots of other more colloquial academics have picked it up and interpret it for everybody else. And the basic idea here is the term "the media is the message," where the ultimate thing that you gain from interacting with a form of media is not the content itself, but the manner in which the media forces you to behave to interact with it.
Okay, so that's the reason why like I hate talking to people on the phone because I can't do anything while I'm doing it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Talking to somebody in person is different than talking to
Oh, I love
somebody
it.
on the phone.
It's far superior.
And so similarly, the idea here is so say like listening to a podcast. So I would argue like, yes, there are podcasts that have good content. You know, like there's this one called Coffee with Butterscotch that's
pretty good.
Has these game developers and they talk about shit. And we do get messages from people who say, yeah, I've been listening to your podcast and I got inspired to go and make a game or
It
whatever.
put you in a slightly better place than you were before you listened to it, right?
And so there's like sort of listening to that episode of that podcast. That's just a thing that you did one time, right? If listening to podcasts, period, is a thing that you do like while you do dishes,
Right.
while
And
you're
that's
mowing,
the
while
habit
you're
that I'm trying to turn off.
right. So
Right.
what?
There's
So
a
what
fundamental
that
difference, right? Isn't it?
there is? Well, yeah.
Yeah.
So this kind of comes back to the debate between universally saying a thing is bad to do, period, versus doing it on purpose to extract a specific value from it.
Right.
Right.
So it's about controlling it as an action, not as a habit.
Yes.
Because
Right.
when it comes to something like television, If watching TV is your hobby, where you come home from work, you turn on the tube, and then every 2.5 minutes somebody sells you Bleach for a minute and a half, right? Then
or every 20 minutes you hit next to watch the next episode.
Right. Then that does something to you in the long term because you are
something bad.
Yeah, because your brain changes as you expose it to repeated stimuli of different types, right? And so the more you engage in a behavior that has short-term benefits, the more your brain will crave doing that thing, and it becomes more and more ingrained, and it starts to become your default behavior. Right. Where if you reach a decision point where you have to decide whether to do thing A or thing B, if it happens at a certain point in the day where you are tired or whatever, you just don't have the willpower to make that decision, you land in a default state, right? And so you come home from work and you think, should I practice guitar or should I watch TV? You don't even ask that question, right? Because you're tired. So instead you just do whatever you normally do, which is that thing. Yep. And then on top of that, aside from the habit forming nature of it, the type of media that you engage with changes the way that you think. And so if you're, for 3 to 6 hours a day, you're constantly being bombarded with like rapidly changing camera angles, cliffhangers, cool ass one-liners, intense music, and then randomly interspersed with people trying to sell you stuff every 15 to 30 seconds, then your ability to pay attention to things in the long form changes, right? You lose that capacity. And so reading
things don't include that drip.
Yeah. So reading a book, if you've watched TV for 6 hours a day for a year, reading a book is real fucking hard, right? Right. Because you've sort of undone those mental wires to be able to do that kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, I think a big part of this does come down to the interruption concept, mainly. That's what it sounds like, because watching an hour straight of a particular story unfold, for example, given the example that 30 Extra was giving.
Yeah, I mean, being engaged in some
interesting story. I agree. There's no problem with it whatsoever. But I think the whole point here is that there's nuance.
Yeah, well,
there's nuance.
Imagine that.
But here's the position that I take, which is
what's that?
Which is globally state that these things you should just stay away from them, right? Because that's where you start.
Sure.
And then from there, you get to make an informed, careful, nuanced decision about what actually is important to you and why, and be deliberate about it. So that if it is the case, if you've evaluated and you've thought something like, okay, I get this social time by watching the Great British Bake Off, which I enjoy as a show.
And you get inspiration about sweet ass bread.
Yeah. And that show itself is a bunch of people not being assholes to each other, which is pretty fucking weird. But the loveliest thing. But if you are watching shows where it's just people being assholes to each other, which is all of most of American TV, I'm also going to sit that one. That one is universally bad, and there is no nuance. It's just bad. That is bad for your fucking brain, just to see people be mean to each other all the time, right? So this kind of thing, if you're like trying to be a better person and you want to see people be
nice. But you're watching the Jersey Shore every night.
Right.
It's my vice. But I guess I watched The Bachelor. What does that mean? Who knows?
It's bad for you, man.
What does it mean?
But it's so good.
Yeah, but I think
all bad things are.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. And so and I think it is the case, especially because of smartphones. It's easy to have these things creep, right? And so like, let's say, because it used to be the case that when radio first appeared, people would gather around the radio, right? And as a family, they would listen to
the
a radio
one station
show
that was available to
them.
you.
And there were no advertisements on the radio at the beginning. And the big radio networks,
they sold radios.
They would literally sell the radios, period.
That's how they made money.
And then the content was free, and the device itself was the moneymaker.
Sort of like how, iTunes and Google Play sell the device and then they give you all the apps for free.
Right, exactly. So that's the way that the model used to be. And so people would, take an hour out of their day to gather around the radio and just listen to the radio as a family or whatever. And like the shows would come at a fixed time and they were in a fixed location because a radio was fucking huge, right? Like it was a big ass gadget sitting in the middle of your living room or whatever. Well, probably on the edge, but still. And so now you've got this supercomputer in your pocket and you can listen to podcasts. You can put Netflix on it. You can put a show on there, and like while you're washing dishes, you could set your phone like next to the sink, while you wash your dishes and, be so the reason that it's I think important nowadays to start with a hard line stance and then
work backwards.
and then work
Yeah.
backwards and kind of like make nuanced exceptions on purpose where you're specifically trying to get value from it, and doing it in a focused way. So instead of like, I'm going to like casually listen to podcasts while I brush my teeth, mow the lawn, do dishes, drive, sweep the floor.
I just don't want to be alone in my
I just
thoughts.
don't want to. Because we're entering a world where it is possible to never be alone with your
Oh, yeah,
thoughts.
we're already in it. We're
Yeah.
not entering. It's full
Yeah.
blown, man.
Yeah. And so it's important to take time to think about shit. And so you just have to be careful about allowing things to creep, because it's a very short hop and a skip away from watching the British Bake Show, for like 3 hours a week, to then being like, what else? Somebody else recommended this good show. Let's watch that. Right. And you do that. And then at some point you put the, Netflix app on your phone or something. And then all of a sudden you can watch stuff anywhere, no matter where you go. Right.
Slippery slope.
Yeah.
There's
And
just tons of stuff there.
Yeah. And so
There's no end
it's
to it.
just real easy to slide down it.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's
Yep. So I've been purging podcasts, and
Yeah.
and I'm trying to cut it down to the ones that I'm just thinking about. Man, like, what are the ones that are actually like doing something for me?
I just
Well, and
listened to two: Manager Tools
Nice.
and How I Built This.
How about this is good?
And I only listen to them while I'm driving here in the morning.
yeah. And there's some interesting things to think about too, which is it's like, so for example, you talk about like, listen to a podcast while you do yard work or something.
Mm-hmm.
And then over this weekend, you just did yard work.
Yeah.
Right. And then you come to work on Monday with all these interesting ideas
Yeah.
that you thought of because you were thinking instead of listening to a podcast.
Because I decided that mowing the lawn isn't boring. It's an opportunity to think about stuff when there's literally no other option. Right.
Yeah. But it's also the case that I heard this quote. I can't remember where it came from, but it's that creativity is like breathing, right? You have to inhale and you have to exhale, right? So you have to bring in new ideas from elsewhere, and then you also have to put new ideas out there into the world.
Yeah. So
And so it's not.
We're doing a lot of inhaling nowadays.
Yeah, we're not-
Yeah, you have to exhale from time to time, and I think. But this also means.
otherwise you get acid blood.
That's true. Yeah, because
That
the
is
carbon
true.
dioxide builds up, and
Yeah.
then you turn into an acid man, and then you die.
Then you just rot from the inside out.
Gross.
And so I think even like taking time, like you do yard work and then go, I'm going to listen to an episode of How I Built This, and sit down like with a notepad.
Or even better, other
Just
way
listen to
around.
it.
Right.
Listen to it first.
Yeah. And
And then go think
Then,
about stuff.
and then like, if you know that you have something coming where you're going to have some like thought time, listen to a good informative podcast first on purpose, just by itself, get some ideas about the world, then go take
Then go
time
think
to
about
think
it.
while you do it.
This is funny because like, I know you guys gave me some shit about getting that record player a long time ago.
Did I? I don't remember.
I just thought
But-
it was funny.
But
Yeah, I think we were just amused that you got a record player.
well, so the funny thing is though, is just putting on a record and then just sitting down to listen to it. Like at what point in the last couple weeks have you literally just listened to music?
Right. Instead of like,
It's always
I'm about
background
to do
noise.
something, I got to turn that
Yeah.
on as to fill my ear holes.
And it's a fundamentally different experience to actually just focus on it as opposed to doing like a billion other things. And something about
That's
putting it
pretty
on
weird, isn't it?
It is really weird. And something about putting it on like a huge plastic disc makes it so you're like, I'm gonna pay attention to this.
Yeah, it's part of the ritual, right?
It is,
of
yeah.
having things that you have to work for a little bit. you
Yep.
know?
Yeah.
You should orient your living room so that like there's a chair that just points at the record player.
Because you can only hear it if you're looking at it.
That's my listening station. Well, no, because if you're looking at something else, then you're just going to pay attention to that other
That's true.
thing.
Yeah,
You have to
watch
look
it
at-
turn.
You have to look at what you're paying attention to.
Have you gotten any video game vinyls yet? Because they sell a lot of those. now.
No, I haven't actually gotten any of them. I need to get it.
I wonder if Crypto the Necrodancer has one.
I think they do.
Maybe
I
we
think
should.
there's an FTL one. There's
I should just
Crypto
get a
the
record player and just get the Crypto the Necrodancer soundtrack
Yeah.
and play that. That would be
Yeah.
consistent with my life right now, anyway.
But yeah, I think it is an uncommon thing to just pay attention to one thing and then think about it later.
Well, actually,
So-
and I guess we're really out of time.
Yeah.
So we should. So next week we should hit the time tracking thing
Oh yeah.
because there's kind of a relevant segue.
And I do want to talk about the Butterscotch time warp, which after our one-on-ones today, both Monique and Tifa said that they've been time warped severely, so they don't know what day of the week it is anymore.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we're
I
do.
don't even know what day of
we're
the
in
year
full
it is.
production mode, so it's
We'll talk
it's
about
like you
it,
can hear the neurons crackling, in the air. But yeah, so also just one last thing for next week before we talk about time tracking, because I think if some of our listeners do it,
Oh,
then
yeah.
we'll have some
Ooh,
fodder.
okay, sure.
And so there's a program that we have been using called Toggle.
Toggl.
Toggl. And it is, we aren't using it as like enforcing upon each other to like watch what each other are doing. This is all just individual, like tracking our own time.
It's interesting.
It is very interesting.
But basically, yeah, it allows you to choose like you just say like what project or what it is that you're working on. And then you sort of describe the current activity. You just hit a button and it starts tracking the time. It allows you to easily swap between things and stuff like that. And then at the end of the day, look back and you have an actually clear picture about exactly how much time you spent doing different things. Yep. And it often rarely aligns with what you feel like you spent your day doing, which is really weird. So if you want to kind of get a head start on what we may want to talk about next week, get Toggle and just start, tracking your time, pay attention to where your time's going. So, all right, you guys, that's all the time we have. Thank you for listening. And also thanks to Fat Bard, our producer, and Monique, our question organizer and podcast organizer. And we will see you all next week. Woo.
Bye.
Bye.